For sure. I want to correct myself as well, by the way. You did redshirt in 2011. So you were on campus in 2011. So that's my bad. I was looking at the stat sheet.
You're good.
Looking at the stat sheet and saw 12 pop. But, yeah, you did redshirt in 2011. I do want to make that clear. So when I asked this next question, I'm glad that I have that context now, because not only were you part of those 12 and 13 teams, but 11, 12, and 13, like I said, you redshirted the first year. You played sparingly the next two. But still, to be a part of a team that accomplished what those teams accomplished, I mean, winning 3 straight bowl games, 3 straight 11-win seasons. You beat Clemson 3 straight years. I mean, just to be a part of those teams, I just can't imagine there was ever any better time in the history of South Carolina football to be a South Carolina football player than that time. I'm sure that had to be a magical ride for you.
Yeah, I mean, that go back to the whole environment. It was electric at every single game, and whether we were playing – that FCS team, that game before the Clemson game every year, that game was packed every single year. And those aren't typically the games that you see a bunch of fans in the stadium, but that's just how Williams-Brice was, especially since we were that good. And then those years, we were 1 game away every single year from the SEC championship game. It was always at the end of some game. I remember it being, the LSU game or a game like that where we thought we had in the bag and we ended up losing that one game that kind of took us out of contention. But we were always contenders those 3 years to make something shake. And that was, looking back now, those were those opportunities we had to get to, the SEC championship game or the possible, like the BCS and all that kind of stuff was, and we finished in the top 10, I think, every year those 3 years. And the caliber of players we had, the draft picks we had those years. And I mean, it was like you said, a great time to be a South Carolina football player, a great time to be a South Carolina fan. And, I look back now, all the guys that are still playing, all the guys that did play, but, that circulated through those teams, the level of talent was crazy. There's always competition. It was just a fun time to be a player too, because we were winning. It was fun in the locker room. Everybody was, high spirits. It was just fun.
For sure. You've been talking about the environment a lot, KJ. And again, there's there's so many games that you were a part of that we could just go down the list of this game. But just off the top of my head, 2012 Georgia, obviously 35-7 win, pandemonium at Williams-Brice. I think of 2013 Clemson's another one. And then 2014, the Georgia game, a game which I was at, and I would argue that the missed field goal was one of the loudest, if not the loudest times at Williams-Brice. What was the loudest that you can recall Williams-Brice? Is it one of those, or is it maybe like a different game that's a little under the radar?
The loudest game, the loudest I've ever heard Williams-Brice was either on 2 different plays, the first 2 games that you talked about. It was either Ace's punt return against Georgia. That was one of the 2 times in college that I felt the stadium shake on the field. And then the other was the next year, I think it was the next year, Clemson game, where I think it might have been the first touchdown, Bruce's touchdown, towards the student section. Those 2 plays I'll always remember as 2 of the loudest that I ever heard Williams-Brice Stadium. Definitely those 2 plays. And those 2 games in general, like those 2 games were insane from an electricity environment standpoint. That was some of the best environment you could ever play in. And then the 2014 game, obviously that was a crazy environment as well.
And just a crazy game in general, for sure. I mean, the rain, hour and a half delay, it was nuts. It was nuts.
Yep.
I want to move into that 2014 season, KJ. I want to ask you, I mean, again, offensively, you guys did your thing, but just from your perspective, I think everyone assumed, fans especially, but guys that I've talked to that I've had on the show previously that were, your former teammates, everyone just assumed because, listen, you guys came in preseason top 10 team. Again, you're opening up SEC Network against Texas A&M. Everyone just assumed that it was going to keep rolling. You know what I mean? That we were just going to keep winning. I mean, we're going to keep winning big. And again, like I said, offensively, I think you guys certainly did your thing, but there were a lot of changes on that team for sure. I mean, you lost Clowney on the defensive side. That was the really, really big one, but you lost others on the defensive line. You're replacing Connor Shaw with Dylan Thompson. I mean, there were a lot of holes to fill, but, listen, Steve Spurrier coached team that we had plenty of talent, whatever. Did you see 2014? Like, did you see the way that season played out? Did you see that coming? Because again, you're a guy, you lined up against that defense every single day. Was it something that, I mean, did you ever have any, not necessarily doubt? I mean, you have that confidence, you guys put the work in, but what, I mean, just to be honest, was there anything that necessarily that in your head you're like, you know what, I'm not really surprised the way 2014 played out?
It was definitely a different look for like as a team. It was a different defense look. Like we lost a bunch of guys, but we still had the caliber of guys that could compete and could have kept it rolling. Um, I can't really be one to pinpoint what it was
Right.
that didn't allow it to happen. Um, I think that Texas A&M game, that first game, was a shot
Right.
because of the confidence we had. You know, we still had the confidence from the last few seasons, even though that some guys had circulated out, and we had some new younger guys in coming in. But you know, we still kept that confidence. We still knew who we were, and it just wasn't clicking. I guess that's the best way to put it. Without There's a lot. I mean, yeah, it just wasn't clicking. As
Right.
as much as we thought it was going to, there were some things that we had to do from an adjustment standpoint that just didn't pan out in certain games, and um, you know, we were still able to, you know, crunch some games out and make a bowl game and win the bowl game, but it definitely didn't. It wasn't the same season that we had had the previous 3 years. It just didn't click that year.